The problem with mindfulness is that it's uncomfortably boring and we have to sit with our thoughts. I think mindfulness is very brave because you're sitting down and you're looking in the eye all the stuff that people usually numb and run away from. And that can be difficult and that can be uncomfortable. It's difficult to do meditation as a distraction because when you sit alone and, with your eyes closed and you remove all stimulus, your brain is going to start throwing at you all of the stuff that you're trying to distract yourself from, and you're going to have to sit with it.
When you talk meditation, so there's a couple questions here, is where do you have your clients start, right? Mm-hmm. Because if they've never done anything, it's going to be hard, right? So what's the starting place for that? Then if the meditation is being used basically just as a way to distract from the normal day-to-day and the stresses from the day-to-day, how would that be any different than just binge watching some show on Netflix that is achieving that same goal? Specific to just only that goal, being distracted away from what the normal thoughts are.
I think that when it comes to meditation, it's difficult to do meditation as a distraction because when you sit alone and, with your eyes closed and you remove all stimulus, your brain is going to start throwing at you all of the stuff that you're trying to distract yourself from, and you're going to have to sit with it. And I think that's why people don't like it. And just like cardio and just like mobility, the more you need to do it, the feels and the more you suck at it. If you get onto the elliptical and you can't do 2 minutes, that doesn't mean that cardio is not for you. That means you need to do a shit ton of it, and you probably should have done it a while ago. So when people sit down and they go, well, I can't meditate, my mind's too busy, it would be like me being like, I can't deadlift, it's too heavy. It's like, well, yeah, that's welcome to training. So when it comes to starting meditation, there's lots of different types of meditation that people can do. And if people are doing a certain one that they like and it works for them, do that. Just like training, there's lots of ways to get in shape. The form of meditation that has the most research is called mindfulness meditation, which is where we focus our attention on the present moment. And the way that we do that is we use a series of anchors. So if we were to meditate now, the things that we would focus on would be the typical one is the breath. It's like the rise and the fall of the breath and feeling that sensation in the body, as well as things like the physical body against the chair, the feeling of the air coming into the body, maybe music if it was playing. But all of these are just tools so that we can focus less on what's going on up here and more just purely in the present, because the mind is thinking about the past or the future, typically. So we're bringing our attention into that present moment. And then what happens is you do that for like maybe half a second, and then you go, oh, fuck yeah, I did it. And then your mind wanders off again. And if we perceive that as a failure, it would be like coming in and doing a bicep curl and being like, I nailed it. And then when you lower the weight, you go, oh, I fucked it up. It's like, why do you lower the weight when you train? So that you can lift it back up again. And that's what mindfulness is. Your training is not coming in and just, well, depending on the type of training you're doing, training is not coming in and going, oh, I'm just going to hold the contraction of the lift for 60 minutes and that's my workout. That's not how you train. You pick it up and put it back down. And mindfulness is the same. You bring your attention to the present moment, you get distracted, and then you bring it back. That's a rep. That's not a failure. That's a rep. Up and down, up and down. So in terms of starting with it, it's, when we're teaching it to children, we talk about starting with 1 minute per year of age. And with adults, I think starting with anything more than 10 minutes is counterproductive. It would just be like if you've never trained and you're like, I'm going to go hit CrossFit. That sounds like a good idea. You're going to hate it. You're never going to go back. So 5 to 10 minutes is a great place to start. I have been, since the first iPhone came out, I've been using Headspace, and I've been recommending Headspace. I think Andy, who narrates it, is great. I don't have any financial affiliation with them. I should. Headspace is great. They have a basics program. And what I recommend people do is you do it every day. To get the change in the brain, you have to do it every day. If you miss one day because life happens, that's cool. Just don't miss more than 1 day in a row. If you miss more than 1 day in a row, you go back to the start. You start again. It took me about a year to get through the whole program. Once you learn the skill of attention, to being able to focus your attention in the present moment, that's where I think you can start to meditate a bit more infrequently and maintain the skill. Another really good one, if people want somewhere to start, if you go on YouTube and you search Alan Watts 15-minute meditation, there's a phenomenal one where he explains what it is while you're doing it. It's got some music and an animation. It's a really nice one to do. But that's the kind of prescription that I give for that. And if I take 100 guys who say they're going to do it, 90% of them will not complete that basic program, and then they will come back and whinge to me about the shit that they would have solved if they had completed it. And the problem with mindfulness is that it's uncomfortably boring. And we have to sit with our thoughts. It's kind of like spring cleaning. Spring cleaning's okay if you do it every spring, but if you've never done spring cleaning, that going into your garage is going to suck. And if you've never meditated before, you've got a whole lifetime's worth of shit that you haven't sorted through and looked at. And you have to be prepared to sit down and do that. I think mindfulness is very brave because you're sitting down and you're looking in the eye all the stuff that people usually numb and run away from. And that can be difficult and that can be uncomfortable, but I think the risk of not doing that and then suffering the consequences of not being present and making good decisions, I think that has more negative detrimental outcomes than just sitting down and looking at it and getting it done.
In terms of, so obviously the word mindfulness keeps coming up repeatedly. The way it was explained to me, which maybe you can put your own definition on it, was like if your brain was a camera. Mm-hmm. Someone who is not particularly mindful might take a photo every 15, 20 minutes throughout their day. So then when maybe they're looking back on their life and they're trying to find all these positive experiences and things like that, or they're trying to introspect and learn from their own habits, they have less data points to go off than someone who is mindful, who maybe takes a photo every 30 seconds or 1 minute. You know, someone who is mindful is more attentive to the things they're doing, which means we notice more of the things that we do wrong, in inverted commas, so that we can learn from them. But we also remember and hold on to more of the things that were pleasurable or positive in that day. Does that make sense to you? Or how would you maybe go about explaining it? Because it's a word that does get thrown about, but it's so hard to quantify what it actually means, right?
Yeah. So I just refer to like mindfulness is like strength, and then meditation is like going to the gym. Meditation is a workout, and then mindfulness is what you get from doing the workout. When I look at what mindfulness is, it's the mental skill of attention. It's being able to choose what I want to focus on. If I'm out to dinner with my wife, I'm not thinking about something that my client said that day. I'm choosing not to think about that because I want to be present doing this. It's being able to choose what we think about and focus on is really important because a lot of people's mental health problems come from them not being in control of their mind. And the human mind is an extremely, extremely advanced, powerful tool, whether it was created or evolved or a combination of the two. It's basically like a Lamborghini engine, and you've got to learn how to drive that thing or it will drive you. It's like this, you have to rule your mind or your mind will rule you. There's no in between. So I think that exactly what you said with the camera and the snapshots, I think that's important because it's very easy, and I think we kind of default to it based on societal conditioning and media and marketing to always focus on what we don't have. You know, I want this. We're always walking towards the next thing. And that can be cool if we're goal orientated. But I think sometimes we miss out on a whole bunch of quality of life because we don't take the time or consciously choose to be grateful and appreciative for what we have. You know, I'm very adamant on, and it was because, you know, I went through a very difficult period like yourself. I almost lost my life a few times. I lost the ability to walk properly for a few years. When you have something taken away from you or almost be taken away from you, you appreciate it a hell of a lot more. And I always make sure that, you know, when I'm having, you know, a really nice peaceful dinner with my wife and my puppy, or, you know, having a really nice day with my family, or just having a nice walk in nature, I choose to come back and go, there was a point where I couldn't go for a walk. There was a point where I was miserable and I thought my life was over. This is really fucking cool, and I'm really happy that I have this. And I would do that walk every day regardless, but the sensation and the pleasure and the experience I have from choosing to focus on what I do have completely enriches my quality of life and completely changes my brain architecture. And this coming back to gratitude and choosing to be grateful is, you know, people think it's hippy dippy and people think, oh, it's woo woo and this and that, but it is the thing that ultimately impacts your quality of life, because if you always choose to focus on what you don't have and what you're missing out on, you can never stop to smell the flowers. And I think that it's not something that people are going to want to regret at the end, being like, oh, I wish I'd just been present for more of that and, you know, been more aware of all the good times I was having when I had them. I mean, you can start doing that now.
Sure. So in your experience, when you're dealing with individuals who are maybe depressed, anxious, etc., feel like maybe they don't have a lot of good qualities in their life, in your opinion, how often is it more the case that people just aren't realizing what they do have? As in, they're not mindful enough or attentive enough, i.e. they go for that walk every day, but they're not mindfully enjoying it. They go out for that dinner with their wife, but they're not present in the moment. So, you know, if you're not content with what you have, and that's your approach because you're not mindful, will you be happy if you have more?
Yeah, I think there's a real divide down the middle with this. I think that some people have some amazing stuff going for them, and it's definitely something when you move to a country like Lithuania and you see Australian people whinging about seasonal affective disorder. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like Sydney winter, like, and you're sad, like, shut up. There can definitely be stuff like that as well, where people are the most anxious and negative people I've met have definitely not been the people with the worst objective circumstances. Absolutely not. So I think that there is a degree of some people can get a bit caught up in their own bullshit, for sure. But I also think on the flip side that there are a lot of people who are objectively not applying themselves properly and maybe are trying to give themselves some participation medals. And I think the gap between who they are and who they could be, sometimes people will overlook that as well. So I think it can go both ways. I think some people are not grateful enough and not present with what they have, and they really need to audit that and be like, hey, yeah, everything's not perfect, but this is pretty sweet, and I'm proud of what I've got, and this is good. But I also think there are other people who are like, hey, I don't have much to show for this life I've lived so far. I don't think that the world is a better place because I was in it. I didn't leave the room better than when I found it. And maybe that's something that I should give myself a kick up the arse for. And I think that that's the importance of some kind of grounding practice, whether it's mindfulness or whether it's going for a walk and having a think, or, you know, going to church and praying, or whatever people want to do. I think that it's really important that we kind of come back to center and audit and go, how am I showing up? And I think that you could have both. I think there's room for both. I think there's room to be like, I'm doing well, but I could try harder, or being like, there's some stuff here that I need to work on, and maybe I've let that fall by the wayside, and it doesn't mean that I'm a horrible piece of shit person. It just means that I'm flawed and I'm aware of that and need to work on it.
You mentioned two things there, with assessing your impact, your happiness, your fulfillment. The world is not a better place for me being in it, or I didn't leave the room better than I found it. So looking at that, does that mean that perhaps in your opinion, to find fulfillment, your objectives need to be beyond yourself? Because both of those things are not, the way you said them kind of, you know, just off the cuff there, implies that the to actually be happy, there's more than just making you happy. There has to be some kind of impact outside of you, i.e. leaving the room better than you came into it.
I think sometimes people conflate happiness and pleasure because they both feel good. When we look at defining them separately in terms of how they work in the brain, pleasure is something that you can achieve on your own. Happiness is something that requires other living things. And I think the interesting thing about humans is that we're pack animals in a lot of ways. We wouldn't have been able to survive on our own for very long. And what I found in my journey with life and going through what I went through and then doing what I do now, I find the most fulfillment that I have day to day comes from when I'm in a flow state helping other people in a way that I'm offering them something that no one else can. And then seeing the impact that that has had on their life and knowing that it's kind of had this, you know, ripple effect, that brings me more peace at the end of the day when I'm trying to fall asleep at night than anything pleasure related. And the interesting thing about when we look at happiness and pleasure is pleasure seems to be very subject to tolerance. You know, if you go out and drink a bunch of booze and, you know, do a bunch of drugs and, you know, just fucking party, you don't really wake up the next day and go, oh, that was sweet. I feel grounded and content for that. You're like, I want to do it again. I want to do it again. Whereas, you know, if you have a really nice night out with your family and your friends and you hug and you connect and you share stories and you laugh, you don't really come home and go, oh, I want to get back out there. You go, I'm good. I'm at peace. I'm calm. And I think that sometimes people are replacing happiness with pleasure. And I think that that can be that hedonistic, you know, hedonistic being like self-pleasuring. I think that pathway can be quite empty and hollow over time because it leaves you with less than when you found it. Whereas if you're focusing on, you know, and when I talk about what my purpose is, I like to say that my purpose is the world being a better place because I was in it. And I feel like the work that I've done in this space, and that's why I continue to write books and make content and work with people, is that way I know that, you know, when the time comes at the end, I'm going to be like, I'm good. Like I was, the world was a better place because I was in it. I had a positive impact on a bunch of people, and I had more of a positive impact than a negative impact because I'm not perfect. And that brings me peace. And I think a lot of people are looking for peace. I think there's a reason why men are so drawn to downers and sedatives, because we're looking for peace, we're looking for tranquility, we're looking for being calm. And I've found that for me has been the best way to achieve peace, is focusing more. When I focus more externally on helping others, it makes me happier than if I go out and try to make myself happy with, hedonism or whatever. So that's just been what's worked for me. And I think that it might not work for everyone, but it works for some people.
I mean, I think that's a great distinction. I'm really glad you did that.
I think when it comes to testosterone, you want to get the optimal benefits of testosterone, and testosterone will continue to become more optimal for you until you take too much. There's not a lot that's changed in injectable dosing for testosterone in the last few years. It puts most people in a ballpark, but it's not right. So the thing that blew me away at the Olympia, like I've been in an echo chamber for a long time of people who are